Okay, well, thank you for joining us today for this wonderful panel discussion. Really excited to listen and hear a little bit more about Express Bus and the possibility of Express Bus on 680. I'm going to turn it over to our VP of Infrastructure and incoming Chair-elect, Leo Scott.
Thank you, Lindy. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name, as Lindy pointed out, is Leo Scott. I am now, actually, as of 8 days ago, the chair-elect of the East Bay Leadership Council, and we are hosting this event this morning, so glad that you could join us. For those of you who are new to the East Bay Leadership Council, we are a public policy advocacy organization focused on bringing economic vitality and quality of life to the East Bay, the greater East Bay, which includes all of Contra Costa County for us, and then the eastern half of Alameda counties. And then we also are working to expand the East Bay voice in the area of housing and transportation with two of our partnering advocacy groups, the East Bay EDA, as well as Innovation Tri-Valley. And so some of their folks are joining us this morning as well. And then in addition to that, this meeting is actually, as Lindy indicated, a meeting of the Infrastructure Task Force, which is an East Bay Leadership Council task force, now led by Chadi Chosbeck. He filled in my seat, my vacated seat here 8 days ago. So Chadi is probably on as well. So this meeting this morning is focused on the 680 corridor. And what we want to do is bring to you some insights from a panel consisting of the transportation leaders that are looking into and primarily responsible for bus operations in the two counties, as well as funding of transportation in the corridor. And so what I'd like to do is, before we introduce the panel, have Lindy give a few instructions on your participation here this morning in this, what will be a rather brief and quick hour of presentation on 680. So Lindy, let me hand it back to you real quick for some instructions, and then I'll lead out with the panel.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for being here again. We appreciate having your participation. That said, we do have a lot of panelists and a lot of information we'd like to try to cover this morning. So if you could please stay muted, that would be appreciated. You came in muted, you should already be muted. We just ask that you don't unmute yourself, in part because that background noise can be a little distracting, but also because we want to make sure we can see our panelists. Mark and I, staff here at the East Bay Leadership Council, will be making sure we spotlight the speakers. So hopefully that'll be who is available on your screen. Speaker view can sometimes help with that. Other than that, we just ask that if you do have questions, you put them in the chat. We may not have time today to get to all of those questions, but if it's something you'd really like an answer for, we're happy to kind of follow up afterwards, kind of dependent on time. Otherwise, there will be some questions coming in kind of pre-decided from Leo and some of the other members of our panel today. So there will definitely be some back and forth and some conversation, and we look forward to having that. Thank you so much for being here, and Leo, back to you.
All right, so let me introduce the four panel members this morning. It's probably for many of you familiar faces. I'm going to start with Alameda County, and we'll start with the transit side. So Michael Tree is the Livermore Amador Valley Transit Authority General Manager, and actually the Executive Director of the Valley Link program. So Michael, thanks for joining us. Tess Lengel is the former Deputy Director and now Executive Director of the Alameda County Transportation Commission. So she's got a long tenure there, and we're glad to have you, Tess, as a champion of transportation in Alameda County in the East Bay. And then turning to Contra Costa, the 3CTA or County Connection General Manager Rick Ramseyr is joining us. Rick is also a long tenured member of the transportation leadership community. So Rick, thanks for your joining us this morning. And then Tim Haile, the newest executive director among the group, also a former deputy director at Contra Costa County Transportation Authority, but certainly not short on vision. And you'll hear from Tim today as well. So Tim, thanks for joining us. What I'd like to do is start us off actually with a brief introduction to some of the history of the transit operations in the corridor. And so to do that, I've asked Chris Weeks, who is the Director of Transportation for Bishop Ranch, who has, along with 3CTA County Connection, run some express bus service in the corridor. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you for a few minutes of brief history here on express bus service, or shall we say bus service in the 680 corridor.
Okay, thanks, Leo. Thank you for inviting me to introduce the subject near and dear to our heart at Bishop Ranch. Bishop Ranch is a business park I'm sure you've heard about that's on the I-680 corridor, run by Sunset Development. And Sunset Development was founded in 1951 by Masood Miran and has been family run for over 40 years. And it's about 585 acres along the I-680 corridor, 14 miles south of Walnut Creek and Walnut Creek BART, and about 6 miles north of Dublin and Dublin BART. And it's on the freeway. It's between Crow Canyon and Bollinger Canyon Road. So that gets you zeroed in on our location. We have a green philosophy that focuses on, we are one of the largest areas of green LEED certified buildings outside of a metropolitan area in the country. And we follow eco transportation focus. So our programs primarily focused on the express bus service have removed 10,000 cars a year from the road, and also our van pool and other programs have reduced there's about 12% of the cars that are multi occupancy. So that's exciting. So we have an express bus program we operate in partnership with County Connection, and over the years it's changed in form. Started out with just a couple of owned luxury buses operated by Bishop Ranch, and then with the partnership of Rides for Bay Area Commuters, which a lot of you guys may know about, worked with County Connection to create an express bus service that provides several express bus runs, 93X, 95X, 96X, and 97X, that bring express bus service from as far north as Martinez and through Concord, Walnut Creek, into Bishop Ranch, and also bring people from Dublin and the ACE train up into Bishop Ranch also. So our ridership is wavered over the years. It's been as high as 1,000 trips per day, and between 150,000 trips and 250,000 trips a year. And now that we've added city center, and we're looking to add additional residential component. We're very excited to see what the future of Express Bus holds, and we're hoping that we can work with this illustrious group of partners to bring some of the coolest, most futuristic and green alternatives to express busing along the corridor. So thanks again, Leo, for inviting me to quickly present, and I look forward to hearing the discussion today.
Sure, thanks, Chris. We'll also add full buses to that list of achievements. Not just green ones, green full buses, right?
Yes, green full buses, yes, very full.
All right. So with that as a background, I think as we go through here with the panel, probably reference some of the experience that has taken place with Bishop Ranch. And so to kick us off, I just wanted to let those participants on the call here know what we'd like to do this morning is share with you what is an emerging vision that is really the product of the 4 panel members working together as a group of 4, but with others, as you will hear. There's been some work done in the form of some studies, which we'll start with, and then some work, obviously, that's taken place, as many of you are familiar, in the Planned Bay Area development that factor into what can be done here and what challenges we face. So we'll cover the studies, and then we'll talk a bit about the vision that seems to be emerging from those, and then talk about the challenges and the steps that we can take as a business community to support the efforts that these 4 are engaged in. So I'm going to turn it over and start with the studies and have Michael Tree kick us off, because his organization has recently completed a study looking at express bus service and the connectivity to those buses. So Michael, take it away.
Yeah, hey, great to be here. Everybody hear me okay? You got a thumbs up?
Gotcha.
Great. Hey, well, listen, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the recently completed Tri-Valley Hub Network Integration Study. So it's a big mouthful, but in that study, we looked at a couple of things, including express bus service on the 680 corridor. I've got a couple of notes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes worth, just to kind of give you some background on that express bus service that's planned. Probably the best thing I can do is give you some context to the study. In 2018, the California State Rail Plan envisioned a high-speed network of intercity passenger trains that would be integrated with local transit that would provide seamless connections for riders. And as you're aware, in the 680 corridor, there is no planned train to operate in that corridor, although the corridor does receive service connection points, if you will, from various rail services. And so basically what Chad Edison up at Costa at the state asked us to do as part of the study that we embarked on, which he provided funding for, was to locate the Tri-Valley hub. In the state rail plan, there's various hubs, which are connection points for rail and also for express bus, if you will, to connect into rail. And so we were to identify where that was at in the Tri-Valley, and then we were also to look at express bus in the 680 corridor that would connect between the Solano County Transit Hub on the northern terminus of what we're looking at to the Dublin, Pleasanton, BART station, which we've identified as that Tri-Valley hub. And we're assuming that the Solano County Transit Hub would be the Sassoon Fairfield Amtrak station. So with that context in mind, just a little bit about how we chose the Tri-Valley hub to be the Dublin Pleasanton station, which is the eastern station, the East Dublin Pleasanton station. As you're well aware, BART has great frequency into that station, and that station also has easy access to the 680, which would then provide us the opportunity to serve that Solano County Transit Hub with ease. It also has connections to the Stockton area hub via the planned Valley Link project. And so most of you have probably been following the Valley Link project. That'll ultimately go from Stockton down through River Islands, lay through Tracy, up and over the Altamont, and then through Livermore with a couple of stations and into the BART station. And that'll carry the ridership projections are 33,000 rides a day. So anyway, the East Dublin Pleasanton BART station was a no-brainer, if you will, for the Tri-Valley hub for those reasons. With the selection of the Tri-Valley hub out of the way in the study, we looked at express bus service then between Solano County Transit Hub and the Dublin Pleasanton BART station. It's a distance of 53 miles, and the express bus service that was planned really with the TAC. I mean, I think Rick Ramcier, County Connection, and I probably talk together multiple times during the week, and we have a lot of coordination that happens. And so we had a really nice TAC set up with this from regional transit agencies, from the state, and from others to help us with envisioning this express bus study. But long story short, the express bus study showed that we'd have some intermediate stops, obviously, between the Sassoon Amtrak station and the Dublin Pleasanton BART station. You're kind of going northbound in your mind. Those would be at the Bollinger Canyon Park and Ride, which provides the easy access to Bishop Ranch. It would be at the Walnut Creek BART station and the Martinez Amtrak station. And then, as I said, finally to the Sassoon Amtrak station. That Martinez Amtrak station is served today by the CAP corridor trains, the Capital Corridor trains in the San Joaquin. So it's a nice transfer point. We looked at existing and future conditions along the corridor, saw that it includes some of the fastest growing residential areas and job centers in Alameda and Contra Costa counties. And, what was really interesting is while multiple transit agencies are serving the corridor, it was clear that no single service provided by a transit agency linked the endpoints in the corridor with a one-seat ride. So there's transfers involved with ultimately leading, can lead to confusion, can lead to, inefficiencies as somebody's trying to travel throughout the corridor. In regard to the express bus service that we were planning, it would be envisioned to be weekday only service, and from the study could start as early as 2022 with buses operating on an hourly headway or frequency in the 680 corridor lanes. We would be using, as envisioned, the 680 express lanes to maintain higher speeds in the peak direction during peak commute periods. Just a couple of other points. The first year ridership was projected to reach about 1,000 passengers a day. And as I mentioned at startup, that the Martinez Amtrak could serve as a northern terminus. Actually, I didn't mention that, but in the study, we found that because the Martinez Amtrak station has access to Capital Corridor and San Joaquin trains, it really became a natural northern terminus for the short term. In later years, as SMART builds out their commuter rail system to Suisun, the service could be extended to the Suisun Amtrak to connect with that SMART. Just a couple of other quick points. It's planned that the service would ultimately use hydrogen or zero emission over the road buses, which are larger, they're more comfortable. They're a 45-foot bus that you commonly see folks like Facebook and Google using for their employees. In the later years, you'd see that hourly headway first go in 2027 as planned to half an hour headways in the peak with hourly headways in the off peak. And then later on, more towards 2040, having halfway or half an hour headways throughout the day. So the next steps for the express bus service included securing funding. And the long and short of it is there's plentiful funding available coming up in various programs at the state level that we think we could use. And then, basically getting the operators who operate in the corridor currently into a memorandum of understanding as to how to operate the express bus service. And we envision that service would basically have a new logo and a new bus paint scheme, would be really a brand new express bus service that could later then be part of a more expansive Bay Area express bus system. So if you're interested in reading about the hub study, if you want to peruse it and look for more detail, you can visit the Wheels website at wheelsbus.com, and it's right on the homepage under the latest news section. So with that, I'll conclude just by saying it's a pretty exciting study, and I think there's a lot of synergy moving out of it from the transit operators to see it materialize.
All right, so that gets us a base vision from the study. Let's talk a little bit about the ridership or rider interest. And Tim's team at CCTA has recently concluded a ridership survey as part of the Innovate 680 corridor effort. And so, Tim, I'm going to let you kind of weigh in here on what you guys have learned through that study.
Yeah, thanks, Leo. Appreciate it. CCTA has been embarking on our Innovate 680 program, and that's a program that we've been developing over the years. It's a 7-strategy approach to how to reduce congestion in the 680 corridor. I think all of us know that congestion is continually getting worse in this corridor, and we have to find ways to really minimize that congestion, I think, creatively and innovatively, because the corridor is very constrained. And I think that's where Michael's study comes into play. We have to look for ways to move people in this corridor more efficiently, more productively, and the express bus service is really going to be a foundational element in the 680 corridor. And so what we did as part of the Innovate 680 program, and this was something we wanted to do even before COVID-19 happened, the pandemic happened, and now with the pandemic, it's even made it more prominent in terms of how we're crafting and developing our projects on the 680 corridor. And the travel behavior study has been led by CCTA in conjunction with our partners here on the call with Rick and Tess and Michael. And we wanted to look at the corridor in a way that really hasn't never been looked at before in terms of, what are people actually looking for to move around in this corridor? We want to make sure we're providing really personalized mobility options and really providing choices for people other than the single occupant or personal vehicle. And what we found from the study is that even before and even after the pandemic, people are looking for options. They're looking for options other than their car to move around in this corridor, both to get to their grocery store, to get to school, to get to work. And a lot of the factors that are associated with that, and we ask questions like, well, what would you need in order to do that? And obviously quality of service is really important, frequency, reliability, making sure that the transportation service is accessible, that there's ways to get to it through like first and last mile options and bikes and scooters and shuttles, et cetera, feeder service, et cetera. And then also, really looking at, what do you need? Do you need Wi-Fi? Do you need, charging stations, for people to use their phones and charge their phones on these buses? And so what we found is that people are really, really interested. And what we've called these people are champions of change. And these champions of change are the ones we feel like are really going to lead and help us get to meet our goals on the corridor relative to shifting into other modes of transportation, as well as, really using these personalized mobility options. And so people are just, looking for more of that, over the road coach. They're looking for Wi-Fi. They're looking for amenities along to get to these transit services, such as share mobility hubs, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. But it was really interesting to kind of see that there's a lot of appetite to not use their vehicle anymore. People are tired of sitting in congestion. They can see that they could be more productive in other ways, not by not sitting in congestion. Obviously people are really interested in telecommuting now as well as other modes. And so I think by providing all these different modes, we can achieve, reducing congestion in the corridor, kind of like how we saw through the pandemic for a short period of time. And I think by, shifting people into other modes of transportation and making sure we have, Michael and Rick working on this, a seamless express bus service in the corridor is definitely going to be a foundational element of one of those personalized mobility options that are going to be needed in the corridor.
All right, so that's helpful connection there, but now we need to put this in the context of the greater Bay Area, because things don't happen without us being connected to what is done in the greater Bay Area. Certainly on the funding front, that matters a lot. And Rick Ramseyr has been involved, as has Michael and the other two, in a task force that MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, put together, which is the Blue Ribbon Task Force. And Michael, why don't you, or Rick rather, take it away and give us an update here on what you guys have been working on and how that ties into what's happening here on the 680 corridor.
Sure, thanks, Leo, and thank you all for being here with us today. And the Blue Ribbon Task Force is something probably all of you have heard a little bit about, but probably don't know much about at all. It was ostensibly put together by the commission last May to help transit cope with and come out of COVID-19. It was feared back in May of 2020 that the transit operators as a whole in the region were going to suffer great financial losses due to the sudden economic closure related to the need to shelter in place back last April and May and June, et cetera. That being said, I do think one could make the case that the Blue Ribbon Task Force was probably going to be established one way or another, because right before COVID hit, the MTC had a workshop in February, I believe it was, late January, early February, actually right in the heart of Michael Tree's service area. And during that workshop that I attended in the audience, various commissioners were basically saying MTC needed to retake control of the discussion of the future of transportation, particularly transit in the Bay Area, as it related to the faster discussions that had been widely conducted across the region in 1819, leading to a possible ballot measure that was considered for possible inclusion in the 2020 election. Many of you are probably aware of that faster initiative and tracking with that. And some of the projects that emerged in the faster discussions included a regional express bus network operated by a single entity. And those commissioners at that workshop were talking about that MTC should be reestablishing its lead role in that. And so while the task force initially focused in on COVID-related activities, for example, the transit operators across the region agreed to a common way of cleaning our buses and sanitizing our buses and rail cars and passing out PPEs to our workers and our passengers during the height of the COVID crisis. Once that work was sort of put behind us, the task force then pivoted towards the future. And the idea that's really emerged out of the task force is this thing called transit network management, or a transit network manager. You see this applied in other places, particularly Europe. There's examples in Canada. There is an example in Seattle that is somewhat similar to what they're talking about. What they're really talking about is instead of having 27 operators make decisions on their own about things like express bus services that connect counties and cities to business parks and are longer trips than just, say, getting on the bus and going to a public school. That was the hole in the Bay Area, that we lacked a regional system and regional cohesiveness. So while we had some coordination going on amongst the operators and MTC, there wasn't this sense of a regional system. And there was also concern about how do we knit the region together beyond just using BART and Caltrain. So that focus led to some early discussions about how do you best get there. Do you merge all these operators? Well, when you quickly start talking about merging operators, you run up against all of these things that are really outside of the control of the transit operators: labor negotiations, labor agreements, policy boards. Some of the policy boards are directly elected, others are appointed by city councils and boards of supervisors. Different operators have different authorities under state law. Then there's federal laws to apply, and you quickly see that the merger option, while perhaps worthy in the long run, would take an awful long time, possibly 10 years or more, to really sort through. What can you do instead? Well, this network manager thing. So what would the network manager do? Well, as we get to the end of the Blue Ribbon Task Force, our last meeting is going to be at the end of this month. We seem to be coming to a rough consensus that the network manager certainly should build on some efforts that are already going on, such as fare integration, wayfinding and mapping, schedule coordination, and a new topic that's emerging that Tim has sort of touched on, and that's called transit priority. Transit priority, in short, is giving transit priority over other modes to make it more attractive to the user. Rail already has its own corridor, but in many areas of the region, buses, mobility options such as first and last mile solutions, Uber and Lyft style services, whatever you may pursue, they will need to have a time advantage over the solo driver to help us entice the level of ridership we want to make our transportation system work as best as it can. So in San Francisco, during the pandemic, they did a lot of experimentation with converting lanes into part-time only bus lanes, or lanes that were for buses and carpools. And that's worked extremely well. That example has worked well across the globe and has sped up transit to the point where ridership increases really are noticeable. And the idea is to have the transit network manager work on that across the region, because in order to do transit priority, as we're learning in Contra, Costa County through the work that Tim Hale's doing with Innovate 680, you have city partners, you have transit operator partners, you have county partners, you have Caltrans sometimes as a partner, all have to be involved in creating this transit priority system. Transit operators can't do it alone, neither can the cities, neither can the county transportation agencies. So that is something that it is believed that a network manager or management system can help the entire region kind of bring these partners together and create these systems. The fare integration work that's going on started before the Blue Ribbon Task Force, but will feed its final work. And it's looking at the business case for integrating fares across transit operators to simplify the fare paying for the customer. For example, right now, if you get on a county connection bus and use BART, and then you use Muni in San Francisco, while we have the Clipper card, and you can use the Clipper card on all three systems, it can be quite confusing to the passenger as to which fare is that passenger paying on which system. An integrated fare system promises to simplify that so the customer knows that the fare is the same no matter which system they're riding. And you would probably have three types of fares: bus fares, rail fares, and then fares for the ferry system that's going to grow. The other things that the network manager may want to tackle, and that there is interest in, are more profound than those examples I just gave you, and really get into the governance of who controls what and where the funding goes without merging the operators. And those things have less consensus and will live to for further discussion beyond the Blue Ribbon Task Force. So one of the recommendations coming out of the Blue Ribbon Task Force last month that will move forward is to have MTC create a TAC, a Technical Advisory Committee, made up of transit operators, MTC, and stakeholders to continue on to develop the business case of how a transit network management should be set up, where it should sit, who should sit at the table, and what should it work on along the lines of some of the examples I just provided. How does that impact what we're doing in the 680 corridor? Well, it could try to reach into some of the things we're doing right now. The coordination that's been going on in the corridor between Alameda, Contra, Costa, Solano, and I will add Santa Clara County. And I will give Tim Haile a lot of credit here because he brought these parties together, could be wrapped into this larger transit network management effort. Could. It remains to be seen. At the very least, there's probably going to be a definition and a plan put together by the network manager of a regional express bus network that will cover all the corridors of the region in the 9 counties and possibly extend out to San Joaquin County and Santa Cruz County. Santa Cruz County and Monterey County now both operate express bus services into Silicon Valley on a daily basis for workers who live in Monterey or Santa Cruz County but work in Santa Clara County. That could be included as well. So this will provide us opportunities and challenges. We know that the 680 corridor is a mess. We know we need to do a coordinated attack on fixing that mess with alternative modes of transportation. The challenge is that when you get into the regional planning sphere, you're now competing against the 101 corridor and the 880 corridor. And corridors like that where there's actually more documented potential for the growth in express bus service than we have on our corridor today. Michael talked about his study, and he talked about the initial daily ridership of 1,000 passengers on hourly service. While that's a great first step, it's not as strong as, say, an express bus study on the 101 corridor on the peninsula. So that's the challenge, is that as we knit this regional system, and there's only so much money to go around, what's the pecking order in terms of what finds funding first?
Well, Rick,
I think I'm going to stop there because
the
Blue Ribbon Task Force is a big beast, and I really wanted to zero in on what I think is important for this group.
Yeah, and that's a great segue there too, Rick, to Tess, because of what I was wanting to have Tess do, and Tess is a great challenge now to try and integrate all 3 of these into something cohesive. The Plan Bay Area is an effort that I know we have talked about as a council when we have met. That is actively ongoing, and that cycle starts again. And so what I wanted to ask Tess to do is provide some context with where does Express Bus sit in that plan today, and where is 680 more specifically in the plan? And then Tess, add in other things to maybe add some Alameda County perspective as well.
Sure. Thank you, Leo, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. And I have to say, I think it's wonderful that we started off with business and transit, because to make something really happen in this corridor, we of course need all of us, but I think business partners and our innovative transit partners that are on this phone call are really where we need to integrate that, working together to make sure we can do something on I-680. So Leo, to your question about Plan Bay Area, let me just back up a little bit to remind everybody what Plan Bay Area is. It is a federally required and a state required document that the region has to put together every 4 years. It's a blueprint for the future of transportation, housing, jobs, and how we're handling the environment in the 9-county Bay Area. The draft plan has been adopted. It's a 30-year plan. As I said, it's updated every 4 years. It's about a $1.4 trillion plan to address those 4 priorities I mentioned, which is transportation, housing, jobs, or transportation, housing, economy, and the environment. In the transportation component of the Plan Bay Area, a couple things I want to note here. One, if you are going to seek, or if any of us are going to seek funding from the state or from the federal government, you need to be able to point to your project in Plan Bay Area. So it's really critical that we have the ability to have projects in Plan Bay Area so that we can attract other money. Michael talked about a lot of money at the state level that we could pull into the corridor. Again, it has to be consistent with the regional plan. Rick talked about where do we get prioritization and how do we have prioritization for I-680 when we're competing with other corridors like 101 or I-80 or other corridors throughout the region. Let me just note that in Plan Bay Area, there are several goals really that are supportive of the work that we're trying to do on I-680. Number one, Plan Bay Area is looking at building the next generation transit network. So creating, as Rick said, a seamless type of transportation system where it's very easy for the user to get to where they need to go. In addition, Plan Bay Area has a goal of building an integrated regional express lane and express bus network. That means that it's looking at a 600-mile express lane network and applying express bus services over that network. So in Contra Costa County, in Alameda County, we've been really busy developing and delivering that express lane network. When you look at Plan Bay Area, however, and you look at the regional transit investments map, that's on page 20 of 23 in the transportation section of the plan, there is not a line on I-680 for a regional transit investment. However, in the plan, there are a couple of line items for I-680, and that includes something from Tim's shop, Contra Costa County, and from Alameda County. That's about $400 million for implementing express bus services along I-680. So we have something that we can point to in the plan as far as named projects in the plan, but we're not seeing it showing up on the map. And I think what's really important for all of us to continue to do, and again, kudos to Tim for bringing not only the group here together, but as Rick said, VTA as well as Solano County together. We're working together as transit and county agencies to develop a very cohesive corridor plan along this corridor. We are going to need business engagement. We need to have business partners. We need to have all of us collectively identifying what the needs are and coming around the advocacy of how important this corridor is to our businesses, to supporting greenhouse gas emissions reductions, to providing real choices for commuters along this corridor. And so I think the work that we're doing now is a good place for us to be integrated into the next long range plan, which Leo, as you said, is going to start the development already within probably about a year from now. And I do want to say that, you know, one of the strategies that Tim has done, and Tim, you can certainly speak to this more, but Tim's not only brought all of us together, but Caltrans and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission are also at the table as we're doing this I-680 corridor work. And that's important to be able to demonstrate the importance of the corridor and the need on the corridor. So I think I'll stop there, Leo, just to say a little bit about the regional plan, and then I think we have a lot more dialogue we can do about what to do next.
Yeah, that's great. Perfect. So now I think we got the big picture and we got some details, but let's dive a little bit more in, Tim, and I'll start with you on this. The rider experience, and so in other words, the vision for what this would mean for a rider or riders, and then we can fill in as we go along here a little bit more detail from the rest of the panel on that, and then we'll finish back to what Tess you were talking about. What are the challenges and some of the things we need to actually focus our efforts on? But let's get that vision down to the rider, Tim.
Keep it all. Okay, I'm off mute.
Yep.
Okay,
you're
perfect.
on.
Thanks. No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And you know, I think the vision that all of my partners here have laid out is really important in terms of really developing an integrated, seamless transportation system. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish here along the 680 corridor, but in a way that can be expanded throughout the entire Bay Area. And we're doing that, like Tess was saying, in partnership with a lot of the counties along the corridor, Caltrans, MTC, FHWA, Federal Highways Administration, California Highway Patrol, and really, and also with all the local jurisdictions and partners along the corridor, because it's going to take a collaborative effort to really develop this integrated, seamless transportation system. And from a rider's perspective, it's really important to have high capacity transit in the 680 corridor, but it's also really important to make sure that people can get to that express bus service from their homes. If someone has to use their car from their home, then that gives them that option they're just going to stay in their cars all the way down to the corridor and all the way in their commute. So really the important thing is to really develop a network of shared mobility hubs along the corridor, but also into our respective, neighborhoods is like small kiosks or small little hubs where you'll have other options available to you, such as potentially shared autonomous vehicles, which, as in the travel behavior study, 72% of people really want to use shared autonomous vehicles. And if you don't know what those are essentially a little square box about 10 to 15 feet long, about 6 feet wide. And it's like almost like a little, I call it a toaster on wheels, if you want to call it that. And it's you can get inside these vehicles and they're completely autonomously you can hail them directly to your home, get into these vehicles, and it really helps with this first and last mile problem that we have in Contra Costa County, as well as Alameda County and a lot of these suburban areas that we're talking about. First and last mile is really the key component here, making sure that that people are not having to find transportation options, but the transportation options are there at their doorstep, accessible, ready to go. So really bringing transportation out to the people, to their homes, is going to be really important. And doing that through this network of shared mobility hubs, where you'll have basically a suite of options available to you, whether that's a bike or a car, or like car share, like carpooling, or shuttles or bike share, those types of options that are basically personalized to you, because every one of us have different thresholds of what I call mode shift. You're going to be looking for the things that are really important to you. Some people don't like to ride in Uber and Lyft. Some people can prefer to be in buses and shuttles. Others might prefer to ride their bikes. So it's making sure, again, we have those options, that people have choices to make to get to do their daily commutes or daily rides to where the grocery store, the movie theater, the community center, or to their work. And I think having this network is really important to make sure, as you are leaving your home, that you're being prioritized, as Rick was saying, making sure we've got priority for those modes those modes going all the way down to the corridor. So if you think of like Bollinger Canyon Road, Ignacio Valley Road, making sure that there's dedicated lanes, dedicated space for these other modes of transportation that are being prioritized. So that way we have efficient, reliable transportation options coming from your home all the way down to the 680 corridor, and then have access to high capacity transit, such as the express bus that Rick and Michael are talking about along the 680 corridor. And also within the 680 corridor, we want to make sure that we're providing, clean transportation options. So if you kind of look towards the future, you'll hear a lot of keywords of resiliency, sustainability, reduced vehicle miles traveled. Those are the types of mobility options that we want to have in the corridor, so we can meet our greenhouse gas goals, to reduce our greenhouse gas goals that are outlined in the Plan Bay Area 2050 that Tess talked about. So it's really important in terms of resiliency as well. Like, I think what was really interesting about the pandemic that really showed us was that people were looking for different options, and there was no options sometimes for people to take. And so I think it's really important that we have a resilient transportation system that have the different options that people are looking for to get around, depending on what's happening, that day or that week or in the world, maybe like a pandemic. So making sure we have this integrated, seamless transportation system that's attractive, it's efficient, it's sustainable, and that way the rider has a seamless, connected experience, going from their home to wherever their destination might be, and really connecting all that together through mobility as a service. So if you don't know what mobility as a service is, it's a mobile application that really provides you the suite of mobility options that are available to you. And then you're able to schedule and pay and receive rewards for your trip. And so the whole point is to really try to gamify your commute, your traveling, so that way there's interest and incentives to have people take other modes of transportation. So that way, all of these modes are in one place. They're in at one platform. So you're not having to search through, 2 or 3 different mobile applications like Uber or Lyft or bike share. It's all in one place. It's accessible, it's attractive, and it's all ready for the users to really have that seamless experience.
All right, so I'm gonna turn it over, Michael, to you and add to this vision that Tim's kind of laid out from the operator and business perspective, because you've been working with James Paxson and Hacienda on several different things. So can you add to this vision that Tim's given us some perspective from the business side of, the employer side?
Yeah, and hey, I noticed James was actually in attendance today, so hats off to James and what he's doing with Hacienda. I just compliment really what Tim's saying. People want a suite of options. They want a lot of ease in what they're doing. They want great connections. At LAFTA, we've really found the sweet spot in running the rapid bus system, which is our premium service that offers that 15-minute all-day service right down the key corridors where the majority of your housing is, high density, and also your activity centers. But just to complement what Tim said, what we're really finding is gaining a lot of traction in the Dublin Pleasanton area is the shared autonomous vehicle project that we have, which will soon operate between high density business park where you have Zeiss Innovation Center and the Ross headquarters into the BART station. It's about a mile from the BART station, so it's your typical first last mile problem to solve. And we have just seen the business partners jump out of their seats to be a part of this project. It'll be frequent service, it'll be cutting edge, it'll be really comfortable, it'll be phone app generated as far as being able to book your ride and track your ride. And I see that easily, as we've talked with James Paxson, being replicated in the Hacienda Business Park, where you have a mobility hub, you've got bike sharing, scooter sharing, shared autonomous vehicles, and the rapid system all connecting into BART and other areas of the business park. So, the vision is spot on with the 680 corridor, make it a really high-tech corridor, high frequency buses going up and down, creating the trunk line, and then these shared autonomous vehicles and other transit opportunities feeding into that trunk line on the 680. So I think the vision's spot on.
Excellent. All right. So Rick, how about if you could add here a little bit in terms of the short haul, long haul. We've introduced now the idea of the first last mile shuttle and the connectivity to the express bus service that Michael had articulated, but you had also talked about the ridership numbers and the ridership challenge. So if we're thinking here for a second, we've got these hubs down the corridor and we've got the micro-mobility hubs to provide that connectivity. What kind of expectation would we have of ridership growth and the development of the system over time?
I think if we do the things that Michael and Tim have talked about, you begin to build the opportunity to entice the ridership. And I think we have to look at this systematically, because if we don't do these things, if we don't have these great first and last mile connections, if it's not seamless for people, then people are going to be very motivated to find ways around the efforts of governments to say we have to do more to reduce greenhouse gases. We have to do more to create alternatives. It's, the way we're living needs improvement, so to speak, the housing jobs balance, because we have a culture where people can walk out of their house into their garage, get into a car, start it up and go somewhere. And while they might get stuck in traffic and really bemoan that, it feels versus, and that's their reality, what they feel like that's quicker than what we're doing today. And especially in the 680 corridor, which is really a wide corridor. When I look at it from a transit perspective, it's not a narrow corridor, it's wide. It's got tentacles that go 5 miles out on either side of it. And then they branch out in these little neighborhoods, and trying to get those people to a core transit system in the 680 corridor is very difficult with traditional solutions. So you need all these things, as Tim said. Some people are going to bike. Some people will take electric bike. I have friends who are my age or older who are now using the electric bike. They wouldn't use a bike, they have to pedal themselves, but they'll use an electric bike. They're willing to take a transit vehicle. There are people who want to age in place who will need connections and want to live a vibrant life. The traditional ways of delivering services to those folks has been found insufficient by the customer. And that's the thing we need to be listening to. So these things that Michael and Tim are talking about, I think, are crucial. And I would completely agree with what they said.
Mm-hmm. All right, so cognizant of time, we're kind of wrapping up here, but this appropriate, Tess, to come back to you, since you kind of led into this idea here. What do you see as some of the challenges to getting this actually on the ground and active in 2022 even? I mean, that's a seemingly near-term objective, but we've got to move some mountains to get there. So what sorts of things do we need to do?
Well, Leo, I think, we're laying the really good groundwork. We have a coalition of people who are at the table. We have the transit operators. And I have to say that Michael and Rick are some of the most innovative, flexible, creative thinkers out there and have provided service in a really, really unique way. And I think that kind of thinking combined in working with the county transportation agencies, such as Tim and myself, bringing in MTC, CalSTA, the state level, all of these are really important. We need our business partners. We need to understand where people need to go. We need to understand what the demand is, and we need to come together around a vision for the corridor that we all can articulate, that anybody on this call can articulate the need for this corridor and why it should be in Plan Bay area, and therefore why it should be funded at the state or at the federal level. This is a corridor that it's a freight corridor. It's a major commute corridor. It connects communities. We have infrastructure that we're building in terms of the express lanes. So we've built the express lanes. We're building the space. I have a project that I'm going to put out to construction to close the gap between the Contra Costa express lane and the Alameda County express lane. That's another 9 miles. We're going to go out to construction at the beginning of next year. So we have a lot of the pieces in place. We need to do some more work on building off of Michael's study to really formulate what the services should be. And we need the business partnership to make sure that we're serving those businesses. And already Michael and Rick are really in close communication and coordination with them. But I think a collective story that is that we come together around, that people can articulate, is going to be critically important for this to be included in plans and included in funding.
Yeah, and maybe what would be your thought, Tess, in terms of how best for us as business organizations, and I include Innovation Tri-Valley and East Bay EDA in this discussion too, to work with you and Tim and Rick and Michael. I mean, obviously we can do panels like this. That's a good start, but some more regular communication probably would prove valuable as well. And what might that look like?
I agree. I mean, one of the things I'll note is that we meet, this group meets on a quarterly basis as far as the transportation agencies and the transit operators. We meet on a quarterly basis with Caltrans and MTC to continue to forge what this corridor should look like. And I think we need to reconnect with the business partners maybe twice a year. Maybe we can count this as, the first one for this year and reconnect twice a year as we progress on developing the plan. And of course, there will be direct outreach and integration with the business partners as we're developing the plan, but as a group to come together maybe twice a year initially to talk about, this is the plan. Mm-hmm. Let's get behind it. Let's talk to our other partner agencies. Let's talk to our leaders. Let's make sure that people understand the need for the corridor.
All right, and Tim, let me turn it over to you to wrap up, since we're sort of the catalyst for this group getting together and carrying the workload to get us to this point. What other ideas or suggestions to what Tess has added, and any other thoughts do you have to get express bus service on 680?
I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think the way we have our Innovate 680 program through CCTA. And if you're not familiar with that, please go to ccta.net/innovate680. There's lots of opportunities to get involved. We actually hold Innovate 680 Policy Advisory Committee meetings. Those are public meetings that we hold with our elected officials, and the public is welcome to attend those meetings as well. To provide input and thoughts into a lot of what we've been discussing in policies around providing and developing this integrated seamless transportation system. There's also opportunities to get involved with, as Tess was mentioning, with the I-680 corridor partnership that we call. We actually have a meeting today, this afternoon. And we have a group like that for 680. We also have a group like that for the 80 corridor as well. Two important corridors that we have here in the Bay Area. And I think that there's going to be additional opportunities as we are looking at developing more travel behavior studies and looking towards the future and getting more input from the public on what we're going to be doing. There's extensive public outreach that's happening as part of a lot of what we're doing. All of our partners here, we're constantly working directly with the public. So I think those are all opportunities to get involved in. Looking forward to working, with East Bay Leadership Council, the business partners. I mean, you are all crucial to the success of this corridor. And so we're really looking forward to working with and partnering with you to really not only to develop the plan, but also to really seek funding for the corridor as well. I mean, nothing's going to happen without funding. I think that's going to be a critical component as we're looking towards the future, is really partnering with us to really bring in funding and necessary funding in the corridor to make all this come. It's not a vision without funding. We have to implement it. So we do need the dollars to make this all happen. And so, and there's a plan for that, but I think it's important that we're all partnering and working and advocating for this corridor, as we've been talking about on this call, making sure people realize how important the 680 corridor is to us and to the Bay Area.
All right, Chadi Chasbeck just added a little chat question, which I think my answer to Chadi's question, which is really a question I think, Tim, for you and Tess, is can we add somebody from the three business groups maybe to that quarterly meeting at least as a fly on the wall to bring back what you're talking about, and then as Tess, you suggested, every other meeting or twice a year, maybe we actually bring a bit more of a contingent to sit down and have a longer conversation. Something like that could be good. We don't have time now to get into that, given it's an hour, but I'd certainly like to take that up.
Leo.
Somebody, yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, it was either the quarterly meeting that's formed, or I heard Rick talking about the recommendation out of the ribbon task force about forming a TAC, which mentioned all the transit operators and stakeholders. So maybe as one of the stakeholders, a representative could be added to that TAC as well.
Yeah, so some follow-up conversation we can have going forward. So again, it's 10 o'clock. I just want to say thank you, all four of you, Michael, Rick, Tess, and Tim. This has been fantastic. I think the goal here of getting a more common vision for everybody is definitely proven true. And now there are, I'm sure, a lot of questions. So for those of you who have them, if you want to send them in, as Lindy indicated at the beginning, we will collect those and then direct them appropriately to one of the panel members to collect an answer. So thank you all for participating this morning. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be talking to you later. Take care.